Labor is still out in front but has dropped 4 points in the latest Newshub and Reid Research poll, the last one before election day. Tonight's poll shows Labor with 45.8%, National 31%, the Greens holding steady on 6.3%, ACT, according to the poll, is on 7.4%, and New Zealand First is on 3.5%. That would give Labor 61 seats, National 41, ACT 10 and the Greens 8. With just over 24 hours until the polls close, Jacinda Ardern is the preferred Prime Minister on 52.6%, Judith Collins trailing on 18.4%. I'm joined now by our political editor Jane Patterson, who is in the studio. Jane, who's going to be relieved that the polls close tomorrow night, and who will be thinking, I wish we had a little bit more time on the basis of this poll?
Well, funnily enough, Lisa, we've all kind of felt it's been quite a long election campaign, but there are quite a few of those leaders, David Seymour, Judith Collins, saying, look, we could go a bit longer. We could make a much better run, and the Māori Party if we had a bit more time. But I would say this is pretty much an exit poll. This is how we would look at it. And I think Labor would be relieved to be going to the polls tomorrow because their vote has been falling in this particular poll, and the beneficiaries seem to have been National, New Zealand First and ACT. They've all crept up slightly, and in this poll the Greens and Labor have been the ones coming down. Now, interestingly, is this a surge for New Zealand First? 3.5 up 1.6. We're still obviously in the margin of error, but in both this poll and the One News Brunton poll yesterday, New Zealand First up a little bit. So they will take some heart, although, of course, well away from that 5% threshold still.
So, in looking at this, and you'll say, as you say, ACT has still got really strong polling there. Will National be kicking themselves for not kicking ACT? I mean, that's supposed to be their support partner, their little brother, not sort of nipping at their heels.
And as we see in election campaigns, all bets are off. It doesn't matter whether you're friends, allies, foes, everyone goes after that vote. So, yeah, maybe they could have run a bit harder on ACT. Interestingly, last night, Judith Collins talking after the debate about the mix-up in voters' minds about how to actually help National. So she's been getting feedback on the campaign trail that people are saying, we voted ACT to help you out, or we voted for, one of your potential friends. And she's like, 2 ticks blue, they have to give the party vote to National. But she was asked maybe whether the deal that had been done in Epsom in past years had actually muddied the waters a little bit, and she acknowledged that it maybe had, because National was asking Epsom voters to support ACT in that particular seat for the deal. So, yeah, I think they've really had the gloves off, and maybe this ACT has taken a bit too late. I was going to say that I think it's probably taken them a bit by surprise. Looking back, ACT has really just started to creep up in the last month or so, so maybe I think it did take them a little bit unawares, and by that time probably too late. But they are definitely
said
bleeding.
Things like she thought he would make a great deputy Prime Minister, and what was it, that he was one of her favourite politicians that wasn't in her party?
So she'd been very effervescent about David Seymour, because we have been asking the succession of National Party leaders this year about ACT and whether they would endorse David Seymour in that seat, and she was very enthusiastic about him. So, yeah, difficult, I think, to walk back on that too much, but they could certainly have given attention to some of ACT's policies, which aren't, they're not mainstream. Of course, they're sitting within a party on the sides, which is exactly what they want to do. They have a specific constituency, but, they've got some policies there that might not go down well with Middle New Zealand that National could have really looked to target and put focus on. But I suppose the flip side then is, do those ACT voters go elsewhere and not to National? So that's always a risk as well.
Yeah. Okay, so there are 2 different polls. Obviously, the Brunton we had yesterday, it seems a lifetime ago, and Newshub tonight. But Greens in those polls are kind of about 2% apart. They're anywhere between sort of 6 and 8%. Mm-hmm. So will the Greens be kind of gnawing on their fingernails? Because you mentioned the margin of error there, 5% they've got to get, or they've got to get someone over the line. So are they still in shady territory?
I think they are. They're not going to be sleeping comfortably tonight. They'll really be watching to see the first rush of polls and the results when they come out tomorrow, because 8% had given them a relative degree of comfort, I would think. But interestingly, in the Reid Research, the 3 Newshub Reid Research, they were at 8% and they've come down. So as I said, it's interesting to see that the parties on the left, so they are not out of the woods by any means, and it shows that their votes moving around a little bit, even though the two actual polls are quite similar. They're not out of whack at all with each other, a few points either way, but the actual blocks are quite consistent.
Yeah, and the Greens are the only one that seems to be shuffling, as you say, up and down that spectrum with any great percentage. Well, Jane, we'll keep watching. And of course, Jane Patterson, our political editor, will be with us tomorrow night for our election coverage starting at 7 p.m, so do tune in.